So, what I want to talk about now is how in our own lives it is easier to evaluate what is our free will and our free, our willpower actions and stuff like that. It is much harder now that we're looking at balance as being so complex and the consciousness windows and things like that to evaluate other people. Okay. The questions that come up more often than why am I not doing XYZ is why is this other person doing this thing or thinking this way or saying these words or not doing the things that I perceive them that they should be doing. So first off, I would say that after you have acquired a broader definition or a tool set for analyzing your own behavior in balance, it is not, it shouldn't be weaponized against other people, okay? So let's say you're a nefarious person and you could see, now that you're, thinking about balance and all the factors that go into someone, how to manipulate their free will to get them to do things, for instance. Okay. So you have the classic example of the restaurant chairs that are designed to be uncomfortable after 15 minutes. So the person leaves your restaurant in 15 minutes. You know, in the balance of them sitting there in that time period, what's going to happen, the physical pain, and then they get up and leave, right? They may not recognize why they are leaving. They just know they're uncomfortable, and then they just go, okay? And this could be very far-reaching, which is why concepts like these are not completely neutral. It really depends on the person that is utilizing them. So what I'm trying to say is, don't look at your loved ones, family members, coworkers, people in society in general, and necessarily think that you can completely use balance as a diagnostic tool to understand why they are doing the things that they're doing. I'm not saying you shouldn't collect data on them in your mind to put them within a context of some sort in relation to you. Okay, that's just life. That's just, this person's saying XYZ, and so they're obviously an asshole, or, or they're delusional, or whatever the case may be. You need these things to survive. I'm not saying that you should turn off or down-regulate your own perceptual tools. What I am saying is that it would be too easy to use facets of balance like diet or environment or things like this to say that a group of people broadly does not have the ability to exercise their free will or any other parts of that chain to get to their end goals. It would just be too easy. So reserve your judgment about people. Don't use it to judge them per se. You do it in like a detached Buddhist type of mindset, okay? Because otherwise we're going to create more prejudice and caste systems. What I like to say is no one is downhill, okay? Shit rolls downhill. Do not create in your mind downhills towards other people where you think that their balance, the aspects of their balance, are easily deciphered by you, and because of that, they are lesser than you, and you can judge them in harsh ways. You only know the almost you only know the three-dimensional aspect of what you're seeing visually, just like the movie camera. You don't know how their blood sugar is, the mental trauma they suffered, and all these things. So you can't say that you can completely extrapolate from the outward appearance or behavior all the thousands of clocks within their being that are making them produce this behavior or dress this way or whatever it is they're displaying that you're analyzing. Okay, so it's not for that. It is a self-diagnostic tool. The things we can glean from other people are very limited and often a reflection of ourself. They're mirrors into our own mind, and if you study psychology, you can see some of this stuff in your own behavior. And you can say, I'm mad at this person because they eat crappy food. But then you look at your own self and you're like, maybe I'm mad at me when I eat crappy food. That type of thing. Okay, deflection and, stuff, projection. So it is not a tool. It is only a tool to roughly help you navigate the world and see potential threats or see potential mates or friends or whatever the situation is. It is not something to be used to think that you know how this person is balanced. That is not to say that when you increase your perceptual windows, you will not see more of their life. It's like Sherlock Holmes, okay? He's walking with Dr. Watson, and he says, how many windows were on that building? And Watson's like, I don't know. And he says, you see, but you do not comprehend, or something like that. You see, but you do not observe, right? So when you increase your perceptual windows, you will be able to perceive more of all of reality, that you have access to, right? More colors, more movement in your periphery, and you will pick up on micro expressions. You'll pick up on body language, and you'll all be integrating this in your consciousness towards a better understanding of reality in general. But towards other people, it is too easy. Just like when you are attracted to someone in less than a second, we can make prejudices in less than a second. We see a person of a particular skin color, or they're wearing all those people that were hurting Sikhs after 9/11 that don't even know what the hell a Sikh is. All they see is this guy with a beard and a turban, and that's all they use, and it gets fed into their subconscious, and it goes through their ego to their consciousness, and the reaction is enemy, okay, alien to me, and then, behaviors follow. So that's not what it's for. It is for looking deeper within yourself, because you know the specifics of your diet, of your mental traumas, your background, your memories. You know these things. And even a lot of those are shielded from you in your subconscious. So this is for self-work and very roughly diagnostics of other people and the strata of society, the environment. You can tie it all together. You can expand it out past the Earth, into the solar system, into the galaxy, across the universe. And people or astronomers, people that study the universe are expanding this concept out, right? The concept of balance, the movement of planets, the parameters of a black hole, the event horizon. They are expanding this out. But for you and me, on a practical level, when you're walking around at the mall or something, or driving traffic or whatever you're doing, you're only using it in a very cursory manner towards other people. If you think that you're seeing deeper than you actually can due to your native abilities, you're just deluding yourself. Okay. So now we're getting into the why of free will and willpower. Why is this important to me to have a finer picture or scope or analysis of my own free will? Well, it's because, much like with emotional states that people have a hard time defining and define in very general terms without fine analysis, it's easy to use very broad, generic language to describe to yourself why you are not doing things. Okay. And that leads to reasoning, excuses, letting go of goals and things like that, because you're just saying, well, I don't have enough willpower. As we've discussed, willpower is the continuation of that thought kernel, okay? So by analyzing your own life, you can pinpoint the whys of why you can't do things, okay? If you know that your diet is contributing to your lack of energy, or your blood sugar spikes are coming at specific times, and then during those times, you don't want to do your homework or chores or, work on the add-on to your house or whatever it is, you can use your own balance ledger to determine what the blockages are. And instead of using broad excuses as like, I'm not in the mood, that is such a broad excuse. Okay, I just don't want to do it. I'm not in the mood. Well, what does that mean? Well, it probably means that you don't have enough physical energy because your diet sucks, or, you had too much caffeine, or you are undecided in what you really want to do. Okay, so we talked about having the chain of, like, you want to be a pilot, you need to know the steps to reach, pilothood, okay? If you just say, I'm not in the mood, you are disregarding those other factors that you can see if you look deeper into your life, and then you know the cause behind what you are calling a mood. This is why you shouldn't use it as an analysis against another person, because when they say, I'm not in the mood, you're looking at them like, okay, you have the physical ability to get up and do this thing, and you ain't doing it, right? Or you have the energy to do it, and you're blowing it off. You're just a lazy ass, or you're unmotivated, you're burnout, whatever it is. They're not even looking at their own finer points, and then you're looking at the very broad things on the surface. I'm not saying you should excuse people's behavior. I'm saying there are finer points. If they're not willing to look, you're not going to get there, okay? You need to look at your own finer points and facets of your free will and determine what you need to tweak to get to your goals, okay? You can only communicate with them on that broad level. You may be able to try to help them get there, but if they don't want to get there, you're screwed. You're just not going to get through that blockage to reach the issues. It's like going to see a counselor, okay? The counselor can probe down through your subconscious and dig around and show you things. If you are in the what I call the no state, okay, anything I throw at you bounces off like a shield. And you're like, nah, I don't want to, nah. You probably experience this with friends where, the person's like, oh, my job sucks. And you're like, well, you could go to an agency that places you at another job. You could just get another job. You could talk to friends to get you, and everything you say, even the most logical, easy, straightforward thing just pings off of them, right? They're in the no state. If someone is in that state, and you're trying to get into their psychology, it's almost impossible. They're not going to let you in. If they're not willing to go into that psychology themselves, there's no way in hell you're going in there, okay? This is why it's for working on yourself. Because a lot of times with others, you have to have a sense of Buddhist detachment and say, even though I can see the trajectory of this timeline, I cannot influence it. It's not my place to influence it. I don't know what is behind the finer points of these actions. They are going to play out. I'm not saying you should not try to help people, but there is a limit, okay, of what you can do. And there is also, a limit of boundaries, like you shouldn't be crossing people's boundaries to make them do things. You shouldn't, coerce them into doing things. Some things you have to do yourself. You have to work them out. So this is not for that. This is for internal analysis to find your own blockages, and to only help other people in this way if they're actually are asking to be helped, they're open to it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So above and beyond the excuses we use to not reach our goals or to not do things on a daily basis, I don't want to clean or whatever, you need to have a plan to overcome, to outsmart your own native limits. Whatever those limits are, we are tool users as humans, right? If you recognize a blockage in your workflow, okay, this one book that my best friend got me on life coaching had a part that said, do not overreact, over-respond. Okay? So in my own life, I was at my desk working like a madman, and I kept misplacing my stapler, right? I bought 3 staplers. I put one in the garage, one in the the middle level of the house, and one in my bedroom. I cannot lose staplers at that point. I over-responded to get rid of that time increment that I would lose to not having access to that tool. So you need to work out ways, you need to use apps or tools or post-it notes, whatever you need to use to eliminate the stumbling blocks and excuses to getting to your goals. You need a plan. That also means you need to identify blockages. Think of it as you are a Spanish galleon and you're crossing the ocean. Okay, if you need to go faster, you take the ballast from the hull and you throw it overboard, right? The sandbags. If you are an airplane, you need to increase your aerodynamics. Any drag on a car or a plane slows it down, right? So you need to identify the barnacles and the parts sticking up that are slowing you down if you have a specific goal from reaching that goal. One of the biggest obstacles I see is fear. Okay, they say in Dune, fear is the mind killer, right? So for me, in my life, fear has been the number one thing, logical or illogical, that has kept me from doing things. Okay, I'm scared. I'm scared of being homeless. I'm scared of being attacked. I'm scared, all these things. You're skydiving, I may hit the ground and die, There are some real things to be scared about, but I think it's like Mark Twain said that most of the things I was scared about never happened, or, something like that. So I've developed 3 questions. You ask yourself the 3 questions in any instance, and if the answer is yes to all 3 questions, you just proceed. You proceed like a machine. You just go through the steps of your plan to reach your goal, okay? So the process will be scary sometimes, all right? You have to trust the answer to the 3 questions, and then even if you're scared as shitless, you can still go through the steps and reach your goal. Okay, so the first question is it possible? This is referring to Newtonian physics. Okay, nothing else. So, can these physical things happen in this way for me to reach my goal? So, if you want to dig a hole in your backyard, is it possible? Yes, I can take the shovel, put it in the dirt, throw the dirt over here. The physical Newtonian steps will be there. I can do it. I'm physically fit. The shovel is not going to snap in half. It's a good shovel. Yes to the first question, okay? This also requires you to know the steps to reach your goal. So if your goal is complicated, like college or learning to fly a plane, you have to know you can complete those steps. So let's say you have a disability of some sort and you can't hold the yoke of the plane. Well, that's something to factor into the is it possible part of the equation. But usually it's straightforward. Is this physically possible in the world, the universe I live in? Okay. The second question is it permissible? What this means is, will other people physically stop me or legally stop me from doing this thing? Is someone from the crowd going to run up and grab me? Is a cop going to roll up and arrest me? Is, a process server going to show up? Is someone going to stop me with a lawsuit? Is it permissible in my society at large, okay, in the municipality I live in, the city, the county, whatever, in the neighborhood I live in, because we're ensconced in neighborhoods, if you're in a condo, right, in the condo community, you can narrow the focus as tight as you want, but the question is not if they approve. Okay, we're not concerned with that. Who gives a fuck if they approve? Okay, great things weren't done by approval of other people. You have to disregard their opinions. We're not talking about opinions. We're talking about people physically stopping you from doing the possible thing. Okay, so let's say you were in a homeowners association neighborhood and you want to dig the same hole, right? But there's a thing in your, CC&Rs that says you cannot dig holes in your front yards. But you start digging the hole, Okay, so let's say they had a clause in there. It's not going to happen, but let's say they had a clause that they could call the police, right? So you're digging the hole, and then the cops show up, and they stop you from digging the hole. In that instance, it was not permissible, okay? Or let's say, you see a burning building, and you want to run in to save whoever's in the building, but a EMT or a firefighter grabs you and says, dude, you can't go in there. You're crazy. You're going to get harmed. They won't let you execute the thing. And in that instance, it is not permissible, So that is the physical application of that, okay? The last part is the most important. Obviously, being able to physically do something in the Newtonian world, yes, that's primary. Okay, the permissible part could be breached if you're willing to answer the third question. The third question is it bearable? What this means is that if it is possible to do the thing, the physical part of the thing, the Newtonian part, and it is permissible in that no one will physically grab you and stop you, can you bear the cost, is the juice worth the squeeze, okay, of possible embarrassment or people thinking you're weird or physical pain or exhaustion or long hours, any of the cost of getting to your goal, is it bearable? And this is where the fear aspect comes in, because many things are possible, okay? And in society, like we talked about, you can be all the way down to homeless with no possessions and in a lot of places not get arrested just for that, right? So permissible, there's a lot of things that are permissible. And unfortunately, rich people can buy the permission with better lawyers and stuff like that. So they have a broader window for, permissible. But the bearable part is something that you have to be able to handle on your own. It is the societal pressure, primarily, okay, telling you that the thing you want to do is unacceptable, right? So let's say you want to ride a unicycle around, okay? It's possible, it's permissible, it's going to stop you. But people may call you a weirdo or, throw things at you or whatever, okay? But that gets even worse if you are deviating from the social norms of whatever society you're in. So I'm not picking on goths, but let's just take goths, for instance. They are using a specific aesthetic to kind of say, back off, mofo. They like that aesthetic, right? They are going to take a certain amount of social heat from using that aesthetic because people are assholes. Okay, we can't just let people wear what they want, and not screw with them a lot of times, right? So would you take the ridicule of being a goth in a society that is, straight-laced, let's say, okay, traditional? This gets even worse if you want to live an alternative lifestyle, okay? Because, and I'm not going to get into political stuff with this, I'm just saying, the farther you deviate from the mainstream, middle of the road, towards anything that in your mind feels impossible, okay? And a lot of times, very simple things for us feel impossible. Like, I used to be really scared in my last job of telling my boss I wanted to transfer to another store. It literally almost felt impossible to me. It felt like a lot of social pressure, and I was worried she would be pissed. And I liked her, I thought she was very cool. And it took me a long time to get up the nerve to say, I want to get out of here. This particular store sucks, right? But so there's a lot of things like that. One of the problems is that the impossibility feeling comes from not knowing the steps to doing the thing. And that's where the fear can also come in. So if you were never taught about money and you see someone that's rich, it seems impossible sometimes for you to say to yourself, I can get to this point. But they got there using steps, using specific steps. I mean, some of them are corrupt steps, but you can save money. You can invest in an IRA or an index fund or get a better job and go to school. The steps are there for you to get to that place. But it seems impossible because we are not taught how to do these things. We're not taught a lot of times how to be in a good relationship. We're not taught how to love ourselves. We're not taught how to, as Maslow would say, reach towards peak experiences, okay? Most people don't even know what peak experiences are, let alone the fact that they have access to them freely, right? So the overall feeling of not being able to bear something and the impossibility-ness of it comes from not knowing the steps, not having ever been taught it. And the fear comes from not answering those three questions. Is it possible? Is it permissible? And is it bearable? And the bearable part, you can increase your tolerance for bullshit and ridicule and failure by increasing the things that increase free will. So we go back to the basics of eating a better diet, getting enough sleep, drinking water, meditating, doing all these things. And once you increase your free will potential, that your willpower can deliver upon and work for you and give you the end results, you will feel like more is possible. Okay, just by the factor that your ego will know you have this reservoir inside of you, in your subconscious, in the data memory of all the particles in your body to do specific things. I can do X, Y, Z, right? You'll have that banked. So this is getting kind of long, so I also want to talk about other things that can sap your free will, okay? By not looking at your own personal balance, it is very easy to fall into habits of addiction, watching a lot of porn, eating junk food, binging shows, getting sucked into digital entertainment. If you just fall into these things and then don't take a step back at some point to look at the balance and your free will reservoirs and determine how to counteract them, they can almost become an excuse unto themselves, okay? Because the stimuli is representing a broad excuse, okay? You don't know the mechanisms behind it per se. You just know that when you fall into this rabbit hole, it's sucking up all your desire to do other things, your motivation, okay? So those things need to be examined in the snapshots of balance, okay? And all of this is to basically answer the questions of why can't I / why won't I, or they, if you're talking about other people, which I said you shouldn't finally analyze, but it's basically to say to yourself, why can't I, or why won't I, or why don't I do X, Y, Z? And if you leave it at those surface questions, it's going to be very hard for you to determine the answers. You need to look into the balance of it, the free will reservoirs, like I said, the willpower, and use your expanded windows of perceptions as your analytical tool to look at all these moving parts. The other thing is, when you have a kernel thought that is negative, you are using free will if you continue that thought to ruminate on it, right? So let's say you have a thought that you're not good enough at something. I'm a terrible singer. I tell myself all the time. That thought pops up randomly, let's say. Okay, out of my subconscious. If I expound upon that, if I elaborate upon it, if I build onto it, I'm creating a negative memory that goes fed into my subconscious and fed back up into that free will chain of thoughts and keeps building and building and building on it. And you're giving it more storage space in your mind. You're giving it more energy to propagate again, okay? And this can also extend to when we say negative things about other people, or when we have spontaneous thought kernels that we do not like. So let's say a lot of times you're walking around, you're like, oh, that dude's ugly, or, that guy seems like an asshole, or, make better fashion choices, dipshit, whatever the spontaneous kernel thought is, and you say to yourself, I don't like thinking this way. Okay, maybe it's like something racist or sexist or whatever it is. Whatever it is, you say, I don't like this. I don't like these thoughts. And maybe you're in the habit of ruminating on not liking the thoughts, right? Well, if you do like compassion meditation or mindfulness or any of these things that build upon cultivating a sense of oneness with other people, it will decrease the frequencies in which these things propagate in your mind subconsciously, unconsciously. So if you do want to decrease those thoughts, do the things that build connection and compassion and mindfulness, and you will have, hopefully, less of those thoughts. The other thing to keep in mind before I wrap this section up is we shouldn't feel guilty, in my opinion, about the first thought kernels, no matter what they are, okay? Because we cannot control them. So the first thing that pops into your head, right, if you're untrained and have low discipline and shitty diet and stuff like that, could be not great, okay? It could be something self-hateful or hateful towards others or whatever, but you're not responsible for that thought. You can reduce the frequencies of negative kernels by, like I said, in the last statement, okay? There are techniques to do it. But you shouldn't feel shame or things like that over that first kernel because it was not free will. Your mind is generating these things. Now, so I think it is important to recognize the power we have to expand upon any thought kernel that comes up, whether it's good or bad. It is your free will at that point to look at your own balance and behavior and say, okay, I thought to myself, this person has bad fashion sense. But when I continued to expound upon that, that was on me. That was my free will, my willpower. That was me, whatever the negative psychology is, deflecting, redirecting my own problems onto this other person, being judgmental. That part is me. That's the ownership that you can take over your own negative thoughts. And a lot of times, thoughts lead directly to actions. Okay? So you may have the spontaneous kernel that, oh, my partner is such an asshole. You're having an argument and the thought comes up. Well, the thought, if it was generated spontaneously and not free will, you shouldn't feel shame for that, but when you continue that kernel, and say, the thought comes up, this person's such an asshole, and then you start vocalizing things based off of that thought kernel, you are making the chain of events that will lead to the end, either the end of the argument, or a physical altercation, or something unpleasant, right? It's going to follow that chain of events in temporal time, and you're going to end up there, and then that whole chain of events will end connected to that thought kernel, and then you'll be like, I shouldn't have said that, or man, I'm such an asshole, or why did we waste this time arguing over, pretzels, or whatever. The point is, the thought kernel comes up, and you have a choice right then. You can continue or just drop it, okay? So we're going to wrap this up. This is very long, and the next one I will talk about how all these things can affect society and where a lot of our problems come from in society and how we can potentially solve some of them.